Welcome back to Augment, the Warframe series that highlights some of the less useful augments in Warframe and attempts to fix said mods with some of my own suggestions. In this episode, we will be taking a look at a mod for Nova's first ability, Null Star, called Neutron Star. This mod allows Nova to cast the ability again and detonate the remaining orbs, dealing blast damage and knocking down enemies. First, the positives. As long as you have at least one Null Star remaining, this allows you to knock down enemies around you as long as they can be affected by a blast proc. This lets you deal finishers on these enemies with melee weapons, and when combined with Molecular Prime, also extends this down duration and doubles your damage on the down enemies. Out of all the mods we have reviewed so far, this one actually has a decent use to it, but these are reasons this mod is on this series in the first place. For one, duration affects the number of Null Stars you form when casting the ability, and each one will seek out enemies about once a second. This means that you have a limit on how long you can wait before you're able to cast the ability again to allow the augment to have at least one Null Star left to work. In addition, the damage is changed to Blast, does half the damage of the normal Null Stars, and cannot proc Slash, which ignores armor. Even worse, the range of the blast is also a lot less than the attack range of the orbs, which means by the time enemies get into range, you will either be out of Null Stars or you will have casted the ability only for no enemies to be knocked down. Like I mentioned, however, it does have uses for a melee player, and if moving around constantly, a squishy Nova can survive decently well. Granted, she does not get set on fire, poisoned, or dealt a deadly slash proc that will wither her away regardless of how much she is moving. The damage is not worth modding for, although I did use strength on my build so enemies could be slowed more by Molecular Prime, and the range is only worth it if you use very high range, although that will also make the Null Stars attack that much further away before enemies get in range of the blast. So the mod does have a mild use, but what could be done to make the mod better? I have two suggestions for this augment, with one of them actually staying true to its name, Neutron Star. Neutron stars in real life are extremely dense objects from the results of entire suns collapsing into a much smaller point without turning into a black hole. Because of this massive density, it has a very strong gravitational pull, and I think reworking Null Star to fit this characteristic would make it far more useful. Now when casting Null Star, they will no longer automatically seek enemies and absorb 30% of the damage coming to Nova, storing it in the orbs. Eventually, they will hit a cap of damage, similar to Nova's antimatter drop ability, and become charged. When charged, they will now seek enemies one at a time, and no longer reduce incoming damage in this state, dealing the full damage they were absorbed, but divided between the amount of Null Stars as blast damage in a 5-meter area of effect. Whatever the damage cap would be up to DE, but I suggest 2000 damage per Null Star that Nova produces with a cast, scaling with both strength and duration. My second suggestion would be changing Null Star into a duration-only ability and have the orbs produce a magnetic aura around Nova at a range of 5 meters at base. Enemies with shields who get within this radius are procced with a small amount of magnetic damage each second as the immensely dense orbs tug on the electrons producing their shielding and granting the shield to Nova herself. At base, enemies within her radius will be dealt 40 magnetic damage per second, granting Nova up to 70 shield per second per enemy within the radius. Against enemies with armor, enemies within 3 meters at base will have a chance to become disarmed as the star sucks in their primary weapon. Both of these augment suggestions, in my opinion, would make Nova very fun and also very useful, and make her Null Star ability worth using with the augment. This has been Augment. Tune in next time where we will go over yet another augment mod.